All right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to each of you. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our midday meeting, midday training, midday call, midday Facebook Live. If you are joining me for the very first time, my name is Shanika Hallback, and I help churches, small businesses, and individuals get financially organized. And I am honored to be here with you. I'm honored to navigate this space with you as we talk about finances and how can we get our finances organized? How can we ensure that we are stewarding what we have well. So let me make a quick disclaimer. There's a storm out over here on the East Coast where I am. And so I'm praying that our internet and everything remains as we are navigating this space. So again, welcome. Today, we are going to be talking about church reserves. Right? If you are tuning in, listening to this, church reserves, right? I say church, but again, organizations, businesses as well, and even on the individual level, there's good to have a reserve. And so, if you see me looking to the right a little bit, that's because I have another screen over here that I'm navigating. But church reserve. So let's jump right in and let me see if I cannot share this with you. All right. If you're taking notes, this will be a good time to go ahead and get those notes out as we navigate this space. All right. All right, so church reserves, right? When we talk about reserving and what reservations look like or reserved accounts for churches, some of the things that you want to keep in mind is, and this is going to be part one, you have to ask yourself the question, is giving stop? If giving stopped tomorrow, how long could your church continue to operate? All right. If giving stopped tomorrow, how long could your church continue to operate? That is a real question. When we talk about reserves, every church, ministry, every organization should ask yourself this question. A lot of times we are reactive rather than proactive. And this is taking the proactive approach. Now, we always say, God forbid, we don't want any of these things to happen. But the truth is, disasters can happen that are out of our control. We pray that we are protected, but they could happen. Unexpected expenses could happen out of our control. And so, when you are stewarding your finances well, a reserve is one of the things that you want to have. And you need to ask yourself this question. If given stopped tomorrow, how long could your church and or organization continue operating? This is a real question that everyone who cares about longevity, cares about continuing to operate well should ask. All right, let's go to the next slide. What is a church reserve fund? Some of you may be hearing this word for the very first time, and so let me help you and explain it to you a little bit. A church reserve is a portion of your organization's cash or net assets. I know net assets could be a very big word for some, but pretty much it is some cash that you intentionally put aside to cover future expenses, emergencies, unexpected events, and or specific planned purposes. So any of these things are considered a reserve. So a lot of times, your organizations may have a particular reserve account. Sometimes organizations have reserved accounts for scholarships, right? You may put money aside for a particular reason. And most times you work with your bank in order to say, hey, we have this reserve account for whatever this purpose is. There are many different types of reserve accounts. There are many different reasons why a church, an organization, a business would reserve an account or reserve funds in a particular account. So we're not necessarily going to go to that level of detail, but just overall, when you think about what is a reserve account, like why do we use it? It's for these future expenses, any emergencies, unexpected events, or something that you're specifically planning for, usually in the future. All right. Reserve accounts is not your regular checking account. It's not that, okay? It's not any designated funds that you already have. Some of you may have designated funds from grants or other things that you have already designated. That's not considered a reserve account, okay? Building funds are also not reserve accounts. I can see why some people may look at a building fund as a type of reserved account, but that's more like a designated fund, right? You designate those funds for the building or for a project or something like that. It's not a savings account for the future. Okay, so let's not get those confused, right? A reserve account is different. A reserve account, you can look at it as a financial safety net. I want you to put that in the chat. It is a financial safety net. All right. So it is something that will cause and help your finances to have some type of safety net just in case of emergencies and those things that we talked about. All right. Reserve funds create ministry stability. Right. And so if you want to create ministry stability, I talk to churches all the time, organizations where they're like, either you feel like you're not making enough money or you don't have enough money to make the impact that you want to see, or you're trying to determine what's happening and maybe you have an overflow. So having a reserve account is going to create that ministry stability. So we want to establish organizations, programs, business, a ministry that is going to sustain over time. That is what we call good financial stewardship. Okay. All right. Why does your church need a reserve fund? And again, if you see me looking over here, I got a big old screen over here. Okay. So bear with me. But why does every church and or organization need a reserve fund? I don't know. Maybe you can guess. You want to take a quick guess? Maybe write it in the chat and let me know what are your thoughts. Maybe pause this and then come back. All right. Reserve funds, they help survive during giving declines. Now, I know I'm going to say this. If you have ran a church organization for some time, you know that there are certain times a year that your giving may decline. There are also certain times a year where your giving may be at a peak, right? And so if you're not looking at your giving trends, then you need to be plugged into some type of software that will give you data on your giving trends, because that is another level of stewarding your finances as well, where you have what I call financial transparency. You can clearly see where you have the months where there may be a peak. Maybe there is a church celebration or a church anniversary or a particular program during the summer where you can see those peaks. And that also is going to help you be able to forecast over time or be able to plan ahead over time, right? So your church needs a reserve fund. With this, certain times you can also see, maybe if you know in September, that's where you have the lowest giving. Maybe in August, maybe students are going back to school, and maybe parents are spending money elsewhere, or maybe people are traveling throughout the summer times, and maybe the giving can go kind of up and down depending upon activity and things that are going on, right? And so if there is a given decline, also given decline means, God forbid, maybe you have one or two big donors, and those donors decide that they are going to maybe join another ministry, or something happens, or whatever the case may be, and now you are left with a giving decline. And so that's something that you definitely want to walk kind of navigate. All right. Giving reserves will help every church organization handle emergencies. Emergencies are just things that we need to plan for. Now, of course, some of you may have savings accounts, and savings accounts are great about that. But hold on, because I'm going to give you all the goodness and how you need to prepare and how you can calculate this and all the things. All right. Um, Also, having a reserve fund, it helps you to avoid panic. When you know that you have a backup plan, when you know you have that safety net that we talked about, it's going to help you to not panic, right? Because you're like, okay, we planned for this. We don't need to panic. Panic. We just need a plan moving forward. Okay. So it really helps with that. Allows you to continue ministry in difficult seasons. Some of those things that we talked about, maybe something happened with the weather. Maybe your church is going through a transition, maybe a leadership transition, or maybe you're under a certain organization and you're moving out on your own, or there are many different reasons that times could be a little difficult. Obviously, the economy, we are seeing a lot of layoffs and things, and obviously that is affecting churches. It is affecting your donors. It is affecting your business. And so it's going to help you to continue to be able to persevere during different difficult ministry times. All right. So common church emergencies. Let's talk about some of them. HVAC replacement, right? So we know those ACs in the summertime, my goodness, we are putting them in overdrive. That heating system in the wintertime, sometimes we're putting them in overdrive. And so HVAC systems are things that we could probably reserve for roof repairs, plumbing issues, technology failures, right? Economic turndowns, like we talked about, and natural disasters. And then any other like major equipment replacements, things like that. Sometimes you expect for things to last for a really long time, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. All right. So these are just a few common things that you can kind of think about. What is the cost of these things? How much do you need to be reserving at any point in time so that you can have that financial safety net that we talked about? All right. So ask yourself this question. Has your church experienced any of these in the last 5 months? Have you had any of these experiences in the last 5 months, 5 years, um, 15 years at any point? I would probably say in the last 5 years because that's going to be key. All right. So when you're talking about reserving, you want to determine how much should your church reserve or have on reserve. Okay. How much should your church have on reserve? And this is a really important question to ask because you want to make sure that as you are planning, you are looking at how much you're spending on a normal basis and how much should your church actually reserve. So we want to look at the reserve risk first. Let me see. Let me go back. All right. No. Yeah, we're good. So let's do the guidelines, the general guidelines. There's no magic number, right? First of all, we don't believe in magic, right? But there is no magic number, which means that this number is not, it doesn't fit everybody. You really have to kind of understand where you are ministry wise and navigate through this space. So you want to start though, as a rule of thumb. It used to be where we said, hey, you only need a reserve for about 3 months. But in this particular economy, as of today, 9 to 12 months is actually recommended for any type of reserves. And so if you are even in your normal savings accounts, now it's gone from saving for 3 months for 9 to 12 months because you really don't know how much space in between time there is. So start with reserving 9 to 12 months of your operating expenses as a goal. Operating expenses are things like payroll, things like lights, water, things that keep your ministry and or your business running, recurring expenses that you have every month. Those are what is categorized as operating expenses. We're not talking about events here or there or different things that come up here or there. We're talking about the normal expenses that it will take for you to run your church, to have those lights on, to be able to maneuver, right? At risk, if you are at risk, right? That should say at risk. That means you only have 1 month of expenses, right? 1 month of expenses. Um, if you have 1 to 3 months of expenses on reserve, that means that you have basic stability. So that means that you can get through 1 or 3 months with some of your basic needs. What makes a healthy reserve is anywhere from 3 to 12 months. So if you have a healthy reserve from 3 to 6 months, that's healthy. From 6 to 12 is a strong reserve. And so I'm going to teach you or really show you in a little bit how you actually calculate that reserve. But when you're thinking about how much should you reserve and what does that reserve look like, you want to make sure that you are navigating and looking at these particular areas to see, am I at risk? Am I in a place where I have just my basic needs met? Am I at a place where I am healthy? Or is it a strong reserve? And based upon where you are here is really going to help with that financial safety net that we talked about. All right. So you want to take into account these things as you're thinking about this. Your church size, the number of employees and or members, if you have a mortgage, if you're renting, overhead, community events, and then normal operating expenses. So you just kind of want to get a list of those things and determine, okay, if something were to happen, what is the cost of our ministry in all of these areas? How would our church size and or employees be affected? How would our mortgage be affected? And really kind of walk through some of those scenarios to say, okay, what do we feel like would be a good reserve to have for our particular company, for our business, for our church? All right. So I'm going to teach you right here, just basic, and we kind of went through this, right? So this is your risk assessment. If you want to take a screenshot of this, at risk, again, is 1 month. Basic stability is 1 to 3 months. Healthy is 3 to 6 months. And then strong is 6 to 12. All right. So when you talk about how do you actually calculate this number, because I know that's what a lot of you want to know, how do you actually calculate this number? There are three things that you can start with. Okay. You can start with a realistic target. And realistic is very key here because you don't want to be unrealistic, right? You don't want to under reserve, right? Over reserving, I think is fine, but you certainly don't want to under reserve. Okay. So you want to determine your monthly operating expenses. That's what we've already talked about. And you want to select a reserve target. So I'm going to walk you through each of these and kind of give you a high level of these. All right. So number one, start with a realistic target and or goal, right? This can be a goal. You want to look at your current savings. You want to look at your current income. That means how much tithes, offering, funding are you getting on a monthly basis. You want to look at how quickly you could replace lost income. So if that income was to walk out of the door, like I said, especially if a large donor left today, if that grant funding was to somehow no longer be a part of what you're doing, or if for some reason you are not able to meet in person and you have to go online, and unfortunately some of your members, are transitioning or whatever the case may be, God forbid on all of these things, but you want to see how quickly, right? How quickly could you replace the money that you lost? So, if you have a reserve, well, you probably could replace, or if you have a reserve for 12 months, you probably could replace that money very quickly if it's for a month or 2 months or 3 months, right? So you want to ask yourself that. And how long would it take you to recover? These are key questions when you are calculating your reserve and how much you can actually reserve. All right. Number two, how you actually calculate this is you're going to take your monthly operating expenses, right? So this is why it's important to have some type of bookkeeping. This is why it's important to have your financial statements. This is why it's important to know the numbers, right? And so again, if you need assistance with that, I am the answer to your prayers. Okay. And so I help churches. That's one of the services that I provide, bookkeeping and financial reporting for churches. Excuse me. And when you know this, you know how much your operating expenses are because you're keeping a track of this every month. Okay. And then you multiply your monthly operating expenses by your desired months of reserve. So for example, if it takes you $15,000 per month to operate, if that's your operating expenses, if you want to reserve 6 months, right? Because you determine, hey, we can quickly replace this lost income if we reserve for 6 months. You want to multiply your operating expenses times the 6 months, and then that's going to give you your reserve. So that is one of the quickest ways. Again, there are levels to reserve, but this is one of the quickest ways that you can get a quick number on how much you can reserve. And then asking yourself the questions that we just went through will help you to navigate some of the things and the components that you need to consider as you are reserving. All right. So I hope this part is helpful to you. This is here again, but again, this is the third step, right? And so we're taking it back to this risk. Are you at risk, basic stability, healthy, or strong? Those are the areas that you kind of need to navigate. All right. Here are some questions that you could ask yourself again. How many months of expenses could your church cover today if giving stopped? We talked about that. Does your church have a reserve fund? If you don't have a reserve fund, obviously, right, this is something that you need to be thinking about. And I tend to do that a lot, give people things to think about that they probably haven't thought about before. Are your reserves intentional or accidental, right? So was it intentional or did you just happen to have the money, right? We never want to just happen to have anything. We want to prepare because that is a part of financial stewardship. That is a part of being prepared. That is a part of planning well. We can't plan for everything, but the things that we can plan for, we definitely want to do that. What is the largest unexpected expense your church has faced in the last 3 years, right? And so as you're navigating this, you can even use past history. Like what happened 3 years ago that we were unprepared for? What happened 2 years ago, 1 year ago, 5 years ago, however many years ago? Think about the things, unexpected things that happen, and try to be proactive, right, instead of reactive. Would your church be able to continue ministry for 3 months if giving stopped by 25%? Ask yourself that. 25%, 10%, 30%, whatever percent. We got to plan for that, y'all. Okay. All right. Blessings to you as you navigate this space. All right. And I'll leave you with this. A reserve fund is not about hoarding money, right? It's not about hoarding money and, all of the things. And I will say, if you're going to do a reserve fund, make sure you put it in a bank account that's going to draw you some interest, especially if that money is going to be sitting there for some time. Okay. It is about creating financial stability, right? So that when challenges come, the church can continue fulfilling its mission without panic, right? Without debt and without disruption. The question is not whether a crisis will come. The question is whether your church will be prepared if it does, right? And so this is a question whether your church will be prepared if it does. And so if you have thought about this and your church it has a reserve, right? You want to make sure that you are looking at that reserve. You want to make sure that you are looking at that reserve on a yearly basis to see, hey, is this something that still works well for us? Is this something that we need to revisit? Do we need to increase that reserve because maybe your operational costs have increased over time? You want to look at that. You want to ask yourself the question, if you don't have a reserve, no matter how small you may need to start, you may need to start at the 1 month reserve versus the 12 month. Having 1 month of reserve is better than having 0 months reserved. And so, if that's you and you need help navigating that space, of course, I would love to work with you. You can scan this QR code here and set up a 30-minute free financial assessment with me. You can also contact us at www.betterbusinessbooksolutions.com or info@betterbusinessbooksolutions.com as well. I would love to help you navigate this space as you are stewarding your finances as well. I want to say thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining this call. Next week, I'm going to give you the next 5 ways that you can make sure that you are in a financial position to have that financial stability safety net that we talked about. And we'll be talking a little bit more about church reserves. And I want to hear from you. If your church has a reserve and it's worked for you, I would love to hear your testimonies about how your reserve actually worked and how your reserves actually helped you through some of those difficult times. Some of those difficult challenges, are in our control. Some of them are direct a result of some of our actions, and some of them we have absolutely no control over. And so as you are aligning yourself well, as I would like to say, as you are stewarding not only your faith and what you believe, but what you have in your pockets well. As the Bible tells us, right? He gave one talent, and that person, what did they do? They buried it in the ground. They did not multiply. They did not increase it, right? And what did the father say? He was not pleased when he came back and saw that there was no return. My goodness, on his investment. This is one of the ways that you can ensure that you can have a return on your investment. This is one of the ways that you can ensure that you are sorting your finances well so that you are able to weather any storm, right? Or every storm or any storm at any point in time by using the wisdom and the strategy of God to make sure that we are implementing the things that we know to do in the interim. All right. Blessings to you all, and come and see me. I'd love to talk to you more. If you have questions, put them in the chat. I'd love to dialogue with you as well. We'll see you next week at noon.